Hello friends, and welcome to another video. My name is Britt, and today I'll be showing you my first time painting in acrylic. I'm just using Liquitex Heavy Body Acrylic here on a Stay Wet palette. For my colors, I chose 2 reds, 2 yellows, 2 blues, and a burnt sienna and a white, and that's because I wanted to practice mixing my own colors for this. So all the greens and purples and everything, I mixed them all myself because I really wanted to make sure that I could figure out how to get the color that I was wanting to use. As far as painting is concerned, I've been pretty intimidated by it, so I've been kind of avoiding trying it. I do have some experience with watercolor, but mostly I'm more comfortable with dry media, like colored pencil, pastels, markers. I guess markers aren't dry, but you know what I mean. Stick format media. And I don't know what happened, but we had some acrylic paint already and an easel in our house because my partner had tried some painting in the beginning of the year. And so I decided I was ready to give it a go. I have watched a lot of videos of other people painting, and so what I'm doing here is just trying to move my brush in a lot of different directions and a lot of different ways so that I'm getting strokes that look different from each other and they're not all uniform and going the same direction and things like that. So basically, that's what I was focusing on with this first painting. I chose to do a landscape because I thought that would be the easiest thing, as well as doing it in kind of an impressionistic style. Obviously, I'm not going for realism here. That would have taken me hours and hours and hours, and I just wanted this to be something not too scary as the first one that I tried. And so I thought, okay, landscape and impressionistic is the way to go. So yeah, with impressionistic painting, I mean, I'm not an expert on impressionism, but as far as I know and how I was interpreting it, I was just worried about kind of just getting the values in the right place, some of the colors in the right place, and kind of an approximate shape of things, and that was it. So I didn't worry, are the colors exact true colors to the photograph? I didn't care about any of that stuff. I'll show you the reference photo I was using. You can see that I'm very loosely interpreting it, but it was helping me just kind of get a feel for what kind of composition to do. And I'm kind of just copying the technique that I've seen other people do on YouTube. So I'm just going for it, having a good time, and trying not to stress about it in this video. And that's also why my cinematography is not great in this one. This is the first time I've ever used this setup in this particular location, and I was just focused on painting. I was not focused on what the camera was doing or what the shots look like. So the next one will be better now that I know better how to set up my camera when I'm doing things on the easel. And I'm doing this painting in my sketchbook, so the page is 8 inches by 8 inches, so this is pretty small. And in order to prep the surface of the paper, I did do a first coating of acrylic gel medium to kind of stop this paint from seeping into the paper too much. So that's why you can kind of see a texture already underneath this paint. And that's because there was a little bit of a texture from that gel medium that I used as a primer. And then you can see that I did just cover the entire page with a bright orange as my under layer. A lot of painters like to have a color underneath so you're not just going directly onto the white page, because it's hard to know what your colors are actually going to look like next to other colors when it's just a white page that you start with. And also, a lot of painters feel that it kind of gives a nice glow from underneath the painting, so you can kind of tint the painting in a way based on what undercoat you're using if you're not doing many layers and covering it all up. So yeah, this was actually really fun for me. The sensory feeling is so much different than all the other media that I use, and it was really enjoyable and very free It felt much more free than using pencil or something like that. So yeah, I want to continue with this and keep learning and paint some more. I felt like it was a success for me. It took the scariness out of it, just giving it a try. And as you can see here, I'm just kind of adding lighter colors on the tops of things, and then I'll come in and add some darker colors along the bottoms of things for shadows. And that's my very simplified technique that I'm doing here. Something else that I'm trying out with this painting is starting with the bigger brushes and doing the larger shapes, and then slowly getting smaller with my brushes as I add more detail. That just seemed logical. I don't know. For this painting, at least, it seemed logical. I'm sure that's not something that you would always do. And now I'm adding some darker values to the tree trunks because it wasn't standing out from the rest of the painting quite as much as I wanted. So I decided to make a little bit darker, and that helped to define the shape a little bit better. As I've said in some of my other videos where I'm trying new things out, this is not a tutorial. I do not know what I'm doing. I am just giving it a try and just using my general art knowledge that I have. Hopefully in the next painting video that I make, I will be able to show you my mixing, because the way I set up this camera was just in a stationary location and my palette was not in the shot, so I wasn't able to show you any of the footage of me mixing any of these colors. And I think that sometimes that's fun to see as well, so in the next videos I make with painting, I'll try to keep some of that in. I also think it's really interesting to see what the artist's palette looks like after they're done with the painting too. Like that palette itself can almost be another artwork. So yeah, let me know what other painting videos you'd like to see, if there are other subjects or other styles of painting that you would like to see me try out. I'd love to hear what your opinions are. Now here I added this dark blue to try to imitate the mountains in the background of the photo, but I looked at it and I thought it's too blue and it's too dark. So I'm gonna come back in a second and go over it again with more of a lavender color to lighten things up. And that's something I really enjoyed about painting, is that, at least with acrylic and oil, and probably with gouache too, is that you can just cover something up if you don't like it. Just go over it and it's like it never happened. So most of the other mediums that I'm used to using, I can't do that. They're at least a little bit transparent, and so you can't really fix things 100% if you want to. But with acrylic, you can basically just keep covering stuff up until you're happy with it. So that was nice. Something else that I was thinking about while I was doing this painting was trying to balance it as an overall picture. And right now you're seeing mostly the midtones and some light colors going down. And unfortunately, the middle section of this painting, I forgot to turn the camera on. So you're just gonna see the beginning section and the end section with the details. So the part where I actually add more of the darks in is not included in this video. But I was thinking about that and the balance of the values, and also the balance of where the colors are in the painting. So as you can see here, I'm adding some of that lavender into the grass and the bushes at the bottom of the painting. Even though that's not really a color that was there in real life, I kind of want the colors in one section of the painting to also be included in some of the other sections of the painting, so there's a coherency amongst everything. But I was also thinking that that is kind of how light and shadow works in real life too, is, you know, things are not just separated in space and completely independent of each other. Light is bouncing around off of everything, and so you'll get bounce light from one object to another. So that's why, you know, if you have an object sitting on a table, it's a blue table, and let's say it's a yellow object, there's going to be some blue light bouncing up off the table and hitting the yellow object. So yeah, even though I wasn't going into detail in this painting, I was trying to keep all of those color theory concepts in mind as I was going along. Next, I'm just using a flat square brush and just going along the edges of the tree trunks and putting a little highlight in, a la Bob Ross. Once I've got all the highlights on these trees, we'll be jumping ahead in time to the detail section of the video. And for that, I'll be using much smaller brushes. And I was focusing on getting more variety of textures in that section. So at that point, I will have already gotten pretty much all my blocks of color down onto the page already. And so I'm just doing a little bit of highlighting, a little bit of fine tuning, and mostly trying to add a little bit more visual detail and texture to some areas so they don't look as flat. So right here, you can see I'm using a small brush and some very light blue just to add some more cloud texture and maybe a little leaf texture in the background behind some of the trees. And that just adds more visual interest to some of the flatter parts of this painting. And in a second, I will also be going down into the foreground with this little brush and adding some more little flower shapes and highlights and things like that into the grasses and the bushes. Now here you can see that I did add a lot of darks to this bottom area of the painting, and that's because that is the closest section of the painting to us in space. And when you're doing a landscape or anything with a lot of depth outside, you want the closer areas to be darker and the further away areas to be lighter, and that has to do with the water vapor in the air. So the further away something is, the more water particles there are between you and that object, and so it makes it look lighter and blurrier and foggier the further away that it is. There you go. There's an actual art tip for you. If you're ever doing a picture with many layers of mountains going backwards, or like a forest scene with a lot of different layers of trees, make the ones closest to you the darkest ones and make the farthest ones away the lightest ones. So anyway, here I was adding a little bit of very light lavender and light orange into these bushes and grasses and things. They could be highlights, they could be flowers. There's no flowers in the picture, but I'm just taking a little bit of artistic license here and just dabbing things in where I think it needs a little bit of lightness to it. And I'm also adding a little bit more of that orange to the trees, just for a little bit more color variety on the trees. And at the tops of these leaves, there's probably sunlight hitting it, so it might be a little more orangey or yellowy at the very top. And then finally, as I was sitting back and observing this painting as a whole, I felt that those dark sections were just a little bit too dark, so I'm just adding another layer of green on top of it just to lighten it a tiny bit. If you've been a longtime viewer of this channel, you might be noticing that I am making a lot more art content lately, and that's because that is what is making my heart happy these days. And I am a neurospicy person, so I can't follow a routine to save my life. So I really just need to create the things that I am excited to create and the things that are making me happy at that particular time of my life. Otherwise, this kind of content creation thing would be way too stressful and would burn me out really quick if I wasn't doing that. All that is to say that things are evolving, things are changing, and hopefully that doesn't put too many of you off. Things are fluid on this channel, just like me. All right, now to the satisfying part of any art video, peeling the tape off and getting a look at that finished product. As always, I want to thank you for joining me today, especially if you got this far in this very rambly video. I appreciate every single one of you who watch my videos. I know that your time is precious and everything on the internet is trying to get your attention all at the same time. So thank you so much for spending a little bit of your precious time here with me. I hope that these videos are helping you to relax, de-stress, and bring you a little bit of joy in your day. I also hope that you'll join me next week for another video. I have a couple more art videos and a sketchbook tour in the works, as well as my planner set up for June. So one of those things will be coming out next week. I've also just overhauled my website, so if you'd like to take a look at more of my art, you can check that out. All the links for all my social media and everything are in the description box. Additionally, all the links to the materials and supplies that I'm using are also in the description box in case anything looks interesting to you. And now, just to finish this piece up, I'm just dating it and signing it with a little bit of a graphite pencil, and then we'll take a look at the final product. Please take care of yourself, take care of the people around you, stay creative, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. If you enjoyed this video, you might also like this one where I paint stylized wildflowers on the cover of my sketchbook.